Alright, we've got 4 packages this week. Maybe this one I open without scissors. Oh. Count them. There we go. Oh. And there's a receipt on the back. You know, gotta get that one out. The next one. Interesting. Receipt is here. There's another one of these. Next up, we got these. That should be sufficient. And then finally, the one that I never use a scissors on. Learned that lesson the hard way one time. Alright. Well, to begin, we got Boruto versus the man with the open mouth for some reason, and the Mujina gang. Mujina. Well, let's get these open. Just noticing the corner here, so don't want the plastic to fall apart. So region A, probably still English dubbed. Where in here would I see that? Probably over here. English and Japanese audio. 2 discs. And a picture of a bunch of people. And then on the DVD side, you know, tends to be mostly the same stuff. I was just realizing, I don't know if that's guy or girl. My first impression is guy. But then I realized I wasn't entirely sure. There could be some androgyny there. I don't know. Next up, we've got Haibane Renmei, which is a neat little series. I don't want to comment too much about this one, because I think it was designed with the hope that it could be a little open to interpretation, but I think there's a pretty, the English dub is there. So Japanese and English subtitles and English dub, and it was region A only. Unless it's a new dub, but I'd be a little surprised. But anyways, there's one interpretation that seems to actually fit things way too well. It's probably what the creators had in mind, but it doesn't have to be that. But that's Haibane Renmei on Blu-ray. Next up we have Girls in Panzer das Finale 2. Everybody Strikes Back. Regions A, I do believe this had an English dub, but I am so far movie audio, OVA audio. Special features. That's an OVA. So, okay. So this is maybe a second movie and an OVA. This would be my guess. I wish I remembered where I was. Maybe it says movie on one disc, 66 minutes. So yeah, looks like it's a second movie. And there's an OVA on here as well. Next up, we have the Irregular at Magic High Visitor Arc, which I do believe may be a sequel to what's currently out on Blu-ray, which I should really dig those Blu-rays out and re-rip them because the files aren't reading right now. Probably means replacing that hard drive, but you know, it's my understanding this is continuation, and I'll have to double check before I fire it up. But it was a fun series. I'd say it got a little weaker near the end, but not so much weaker that it's that notable, which means that it still has good potential for seeing where it went after that. That's pretty cool. And then, last but not least, we have Doom Megalopolis Mega Omnibus Edition, which is Doom Megalopolis released on Blu-ray. Who released this? Media Blasters. Okay, that explains why it wasn't a lot, like I couldn't order it from Amazon. That's why it came in Right Stuff. The listing wasn't there, and it's interesting because the quality of this cardboard feels a little different. And you know, I think Media Blasters does play around a little bit more with what they can get away with. It looks like normal press DVD. I know they played around with burn-on-demand DVDs. I don't know about Blu-rays. That's a Region A. Focus camera, English and Japanese audio. So I guess if there was a dub before, it appears to be on here. That's about expected. Anyways, just this week's Anime DVD Collection update. Alright, so I think continuing from where I was last week, I finished watching My Next Life as a Villainess X, which is the second season of the show. And I think some of the stuff I was talking about last time kind of applies. Season 2 is definitely weaker. The main problem is that from a narrative perspective, it doesn't have the glue coming together the first season has. Which doesn't necessarily mean that it'd be bad or unwatchable. I suspect that if you really liked the first season, then you'll probably still really like the second season, because you get to see more of your characters doing the same stuff. Like I mentioned, it kind of began where it seemed like there was less of a direction, and then it seemed to start introducing something, but then after that it just kind of didn't really go anywhere that gives it a real story narrative to it per se, not until the very end. And unfortunately that doesn't really do much to absolve the problem of it feels a little aimless. Like maybe it retreads some ideas that it had done in slightly different ways. I don't know if I want to elaborate further, but a little fillerish in what it was doing for some of these things, and okay. But maybe not as enthralling as watching the first season. So, yeah, overall, season 2 does end in a way, though, where if there is a season 3, that problem should, in theory, be mostly fixed. I don't think it's perfectly fixed, but it still gives you something, as well as the fact that they're kind of introducing this thing, and they've introduced a character that is the closest thing this series has to a true antagonist up to this point. Very interesting character design. It's just a little too bad that they don't feel too connected to the doings of our main characters other than sort of happenstance. And there's some happenstance stuff that happens that feels a little too lucky that... Again, the thing was, the first season was kind of good because the idea is our main characters, you know, she regained her memories of her previous life as a Japanese person that played these dating games, specifically girls dating multiple potential guys. So dating games sometimes seems like, oh, this is a guy selecting between multiple girls, but no, the reverse harem concept, right? But the problem was, she realized she reincarnated as the bad guy. And in the game, all of the routes that the bad guy was in was basically ones that ended very poorly for that character. So, you know, our main character's goal throughout the first season is, okay, I've got doom flags, how do I deal with this? And so her personality grows from that. It isn't one of these, oh, accidental awesome things. I mean, there's some accidental stuff in there, but there's things that she accidentally does that are genuine and reach out to people, but kind of anyways, the point is, season 2 introduced some things where they just had things sort of randomly happen, and the characters commented on it afterwards about it being nice. But from us, a viewer, we aren't watching a show about a person who's habitually lucky. We're looking at a person who is a good person that realized they reincarnated as a bad person, trying even harder to be a good person, and kind of moving people because of that. So it's a shift. And it's not necessarily a bad one, but it is definitely one that is weaker from a writing perspective. But overall, you know, I would probably start watching Season 2 because, again, Season 2 ended in a way where it fixed the problems that really needed to be fixed at the beginning of Season 2. And I can kind of understand with what they did with Season 2 why that didn't happen, but it doesn't change the fact that it really should have happened. Oh well. Let's see, and then with my friend, we're watching Rising of the Shield Hero, and he seems to be really enjoying it, which I thought there was a pretty good chance he would, just because, you know, it's, so like I've mentioned, it's a show where it sets up stuff that makes you angry, but it goes in a direction with that, and some of that is slight revenge fantasy, but it's really well done because it's not like revenge fantasy in terms of our main character being so overpowered that he gets back at his... It kind of goes down these twin paths of he... Even though he goes down a dark place, he still grabs his own future by his hands, and he is able to, you know, overcome some of this bullshit. And at the same time, there's also this idea that sometimes the best way to get revenge or something is to live a good life. And so somebody tries to shit in your cornflakes, so to speak, and you just, you know, kick them out of your life and then get a new bowl and, you know, basically be good to yourself. And then when they're like, well, I tried to make your day ruin, and you're just like, well, too bad. I just made it better by kicking you out, and I'll just continue doing my own thing. It's all good. So, you know, sometimes that's the best revenge, they say. And the show really kind of embodies both. And I've probably mentioned before that one of my biggest problems with it is that some of the characters are a little too perfect for their roles. This is not only the characters you're angry at, but some of the characters that support our main character. Like, a lot of them are good, they're just doing their own thing, they kind of don't care about all these stupid rumor things, they're just working on what's ever in front of them, you know? You can kind of respect a person that's like, fucking whatever, I'm doing a transaction, I'm just trying to figure this out, and not being mean-spirited about it, they're just an honest working Joe. You can always trust a working Joe. But then you also have characters that are just like, supposed to be our main support characters for our main character, and they're just a little
they feel a little too perfect as well. So some of the hated characters are too perfect for hating, and some of the liked characters are too perfect for lighting. It's not something that doesn't work, other than you can get this feeling of maybe it's a little pandery, I guess. But the show's still very watchable despite that stuff. And, you know, good, fun stuff. Let's see. Other than that, so this past week I didn't, even though I was on PTO, as expected, I didn't get as much time spent doing stuff. A lot of that was Thanksgiving, of course. And part of the problem there is just that I'm definitely not as young, clear-headed as I used to be. So, juggling the plans in my head was harder. Now, there were a couple of successes there. So one failure is I didn't get the turkeys out of the freezer soon enough for them to be thawed. But fortunately, when you cook in a slow cooker, that's not an issue. And in fact, it sounds like the way I cook it in a slow cooker is very unusual, because usually you only have to put it in there for like 4 or 5 hours or something like that, which is my experience. You know, your turkey's usually cooked after 4 or 5 hours. But I go further than that. I actually cook closer to 9 to 10 hours, with the idea being that I use very subtle flavoring, which is apple, and I found that the longer I put it in there, the the more flavoring seeps through. Now, the trade-off is that the meat tends to get a little drier, so, you know, I found 8 hours usually isn't quite enough for at least chicken breasts. So turkey, I figure, since it has a more intense flavor, put it in there a bit longer, make sure it absorbs the apple. And usually you can make up for the fact that the turkey's just a little dry because of gravy. But, you know, again, all this is, even though I got the turkey breast, the frozen, it's not turkey breast, it's Butterball turkey breast roasts. So it's the breast meat, but wrapped together in a 3-pound roast. Even though I got it out the day later, it really, the most important thing is you have it out long enough that you can get the packaging off and get it in there. Because even when it's still frozen, it'll be completely cooked after 4 to 5 hours. I mean, my experience was that 5 hours was enough for stuff from complete frozen. And I think this was one of them. 2 of them is probably going to be about the same, because, you know, it's just maintaining that same temperature. But, yeah, not a problem. The other interesting thing was gravy. My experience in the past has been that there's never been quite enough gravy. There's been enough for us to eat the meal, but not enough for leftovers and stuff like that. So this time I went the opposite direction. I went completely overboard and made about 10 or 12 cups of gravy, which is a lot of gravy. Now, to make matters worse, I guess, there was only 3 people, myself and my parents. And my parents brought a lot of stuff in. It was really great. I'm probably not going to put a picture up of the food, but it was such a Thanksgiving meal. It was great. They cook turkey as well, and I really like that, because I have my way of cooking turkey, and then when there's another turkey option, it's really good to kind of have that mix. It's nice. You still get turkey, but you get maybe their ever so slightly more peppery one. Just slight. My mom's not a big fan of pepper, so they wouldn't go too heavy with that at all. But there is definitely some pepper spicing in there, whereas mine is primarily augment the flavor of the natural meat with a ton of apple. But between the 3 of us, we had about 12 pounds of turkey. So we also had way too much turkey. And I haven't even made a dent in my leftovers. I've had 2 small meals, but, you know, that's funny. And then, of course, there's the other things where, of course, you know, I made pumpkin pie, and, you know, I had to really keep up and plan my dishes. A lot of the space in here isn't good for multiple people being here and eating a big meal like that. So, like, I keep a lot of snacks on the counter there. Those had to all go. But I also need to clear counter space in the kitchen itself, because historically there's never been enough space. Move some stuff out of the living room so that the table can be rearranged so that 3 people can sit at it, which they used to be able to. One of them would have been precarious, but this time 3 completely non-precarious situations. And so if this sounds like it was a lot of work, it kind of was. And it was slowly done, but it was done. And then it all had to be returned. And that, of course, did not get completely finished until middle of the day Friday. Oh, that looks like Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. Sorry. I had a Twitch streamer I was watching that I had to mute in order to record this. And, you know, they ended their stream and sent it to somebody else. And that's a good reminder that I really should pick those games up. Some of y'all may be asking, why hasn't Giga picked them up? And I guess it's because I'm really just not exploring a wide variety of games. So I'm going to be doing some Amazon ordering. That was a Star Raptor. Oh, man. Lots of nostalgia. They don't look normal, so there's clothing options. I should play them just to give my thoughts. But, you know, it's not always thoughts. Mine aren't always needed. Where was I going with all this? Because after that, the real other problem was that there was actually a blood hunt. This is the Dead by Daylight thing, and this is where we transition into Dead by Daylight. And the idea of a blood hunt is you get plus 100% of your base blood points in every match. So let's say you're playing Survivor Killer, you get through a match and you have 10,000 points. Then you will get another 10,000 from the blood hunt. If you have things that add on to it as well, you know, that would be another, but it won't all multiply together, it'll be additive. So, you know, you'll have 10,000 from your thing, and then 20,000 because the blood hunt did that, and then it goes up to 30,000 if you got like a 4-stack or something that increases your stuff, and then maybe another 10,000 if you have something that gives plus 100% to it. So, you know, that 10,000 example would be like 40,000. And it's not necessarily a super huge amount, but it is an opportunity to focus on certain things, which I wasn't able to do until Sunday. And I guess the reasons for that is related to the Twitch streamer I mentioned, because I did end up playing on Saturday with them just having fun playing Survivor for a lot of the day. And you don't get as much BP for playing Survivor, so Sunday was my day to really sit down, focus, and say, I need to get what I need to get out of this blood hunt. So I pretty much had... I guess I had 2 goals. One of those was to finish leveling up all my remaining survivors to level 15. At level 15, a character, whether they're Survivor or Killer, will have all 4 perk slots available. And since you do get a couple of perks going along the way, you level a couple of them up. That usually gives you some options so that you have something to play with. I can play Survivor and Killer technically with only the 1 perk, and I could probably do them perkless. But the game's more interesting and more varied and stuff when you look at perks. And this was also a good opportunity to take people's perks and say, hey, red herring, I wouldn't unlock that for any of my characters, but let's go ahead and put that on this character because it's one of their perks, and let's just use it and be funny. Sorry, the Twitch stream on the TV is now distracting because I noticed the person's using a Gardevoir. And if y'all don't know, Gardevoir is one of my favorite Pokemon. But I digress. So, get all the survivors to level 15, and then prepare for technically today. It's past midnight right now while I'm recording this, and so it'll be the same day that I posted, but November 30th is when I think the next Dead by Daylight chapter is supposed to release, which will bring the new Killer and the new Survivor. And I want to be able to level both of them up to level 15 each as well. And that takes about 300,000, usually less than that, but that meant I get at least 600,000 in waiting, I guess. And yeah, so I did that. But the other interesting thing I did, which I wasn't quite sure if I was going to do, but the daily challenges told me it was time to consider doing it. I had a daily to play as Nurse and to blink and hit survivors 4 times. And I've done a little bit of Nurse practice. I might have mentioned this. I don't know if I did, but there was one time when I was watching anime with my Friday friend. You know, it was One Piece. And I just had Dead by Daylight on in the background, and I was playing as nurse, but I wasn't focusing. I was giving a half and half, and my real goal was to just kind of teleport around the map, try to teleport to generators, get a feel for timing of the blinks, the distance of the blinks, and every once in a while, if I did see a survivor, I would maybe try to do something. So I've now gotten a couple of games as nurse where I'm not doing that, and I'm like, all right, it's time to actually hunt for survivors. And I'm glad where I am. I'm not good by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I would say a good nurse is probably going to be capable of 4King people. Probably ending chases really. Great nurse is just going to steamroll from the very beginning. I don't know if I want to be great. Good might be okay, but I would just call what I am okay. You know, I catch up to people and I hit them with my blinks now. And, you know, I'm not the best person at it, but, you know, a lot of people that I'm playing against kind of have trouble juking me, and that's no surprise. When a nurse can move okay, they're kind of hard to juke. You can break line of sight and make it where, you know, they're like, you're going up those stairs, I'm going to go look for somebody else. But, yeah. And I think I've had a total of 4 games as nurse in this mode, and yeah, I'm definitely not getting the most consistent results, but again, I didn't say I was good, I said I was okay. It means I can handle myself well enough that the survivors, they may feel like they're dealing with a baby nurse. I don't really know. I don't have a good feeling for what the I guess trade-off point, cutoff point for that might be, but they're probably not thinking, oh, I can just loop this guy forever. I think they're legitimately afraid that they're going to get hit. Now, I'm probably playing against lower MMR people, because even as nurse, I'm not killing anybody. I just don't kill anybody as killer. Unless they ask me to. You know, I'm okay with doing it if somebody asks me to. I'll probably pout about it. But, you know, for the most part, my goal is to give the survivors an experience where they escape. And I'm at a good place with nurse for doing that, where I'm legitimately dangerous. I think the biggest risk people have, or survivors have, is because I don't have anywhere near as good map traversal / generator patrolling, it does mean that I'm a little more likely to start chasing somebody that I've found, which makes it where some people get hooked 2 times before everybody's been hooked once. And I think that's okay. I just am trying to be careful about not going so far as to final hook people and kill them. So I did slug a Fengming in my game earlier tonight. Because I had already hooked her twice. And I hadn't hooked 2 other people once. And yeah, at that point I didn't want to hook her anymore and kill her. I wanted other people to. But I did still manage to hook them all once. And it's interesting because, like, I can actually start considering doing some of the nurse-specific tome challenges. I was just wondering why there's a pizza guy. I'm like, isn't that Dwight? But that's not Dwight. But I guess it's supposed to be a monster thing. Anyways, yeah. So, like, when I first equipped the one where you're supposed to hook 4 survivors while using the perk A Nurse's Calling, I did have a little trouble with that initially. You know, obviously I'm not the most consistent nurse player, and the survivors I play against are going to have the most variety of capabilities. But first game I had trouble with that, and you know, that's okay. You know, I'm not going to be good at everything, and it was maybe not necessarily good. All maps are kind of good nurse maps, I think. But the second one was kind of amusing because I have a really weird build. Again, I got everybody up to level 15, and at this point I'm like, okay, I want to invest a little bit more blood points in the nurse just to... Technically, I want her to be able to do what she's currently doing, but maybe potentially better. Because I'm not going for anything super meta, but... I'm considering at least having the option to have a complete backpack nurse. And in Dead by Daylight, that basically means you take a survivor, you put them all over your shoulder, and you attack other survivors. If they don't wiggle out of your grasp, they're just actually making you stronger. And the interesting thing with Nurse is my understanding that her carry speed is actually the same as all other killers' carry speed, which means that when she uses agitation, she's actually faster than the survivors, which normally she isn't. Normally you have to use your power to catch up. And I only have agitation 2, which is only a little bit faster, but it is faster enough that when I had one survivor over my shoulder, and I had iron grasp, so it was hard for them to jump out. It was a survivor I had hooked before, but there was another survivor, a Dwight, a vest, plain vest Dwight, I guess, who I hadn't hooked, and I'm like, I think he's maybe the last person I haven't hooked, so I was able to actually down him while carrying the other survivor, backpacking, you know, funny thing. And that's not necessarily good Nurse, but it is an interesting Nurse tactic. And I wouldn't say that makes me an okay Nurse, but it is kind of a funny thing to be able to do. In theory, you run a bunch of stuff and you can just be really oppressive with Nurse if you actually go completely all out. Whereas I obviously don't want to, I've said that. But it was interesting. And I say all this, and if you are completely unfamiliar with Dead by Daylight and Nurse, I've probably mentioned this before. They are the most interesting thing conceptually to come out of Dead by Daylight. Not necessarily from like an IP perspective or character design perspective or anything like that, but rather they represent this really interesting thing where out of all the killers, according to the people who make the game, she's the one with the lowest kill count. But the entire community agrees she is the best killer out there. And the reason for both is that she's the killer that requires the most skill, the most practice, the most... She has a high skill ceiling. You can play a lot and lot and lot and lot. The more you know about survivors, where they're going, exactly how to time your blinks, the better. And a lot of this is, she's slower than survivors. So normally she can't catch up to them. But she has a power that allows her to pull herself forward really fast. Called a blink. And she's not the... I was going to say that she covered the map the fastest, but no. That's probably Blight. Unless you're talking about like a Demogorgon with portals placed down. But, you know, again, it's interesting. And when you are good enough to at least make some teleports and get some hits... You know, even if you're not oppressive yourself, it's fun. And like I said, I'm okay, which means I'm at the point where I can completely have fun with her. So, she's going to be getting some blood points, but I have to be careful because the release of the new Killer Survivor, which happens today, I want to get them to level 15 first. And the good thing about this is I really don't want to play as the new killer too much. Because with her being a new killer, everybody that gets her is going to want to play as her. So I'm okay with playing as others. I'll play with her some in order to get a good feel for her power, especially if I get a daily challenge to do something with her. But before then, I definitely want to be able to, you know, give people breathers so they're not all fighting the artist. Should be interesting. Alright, I've babbled on about Dead by Daylight. Obviously, I've been playing it a lot. I was planning to watch a little more anime specifically. I wanted to watch at least an episode of Science Fell in Love because I said why I kind of don't like the way it's sounding about the concept, but I still want to give it a fair shake. Now, it might not be, it might get ejected immediately because Irregular Magic High may be higher priority. Haha. But But yeah, just distracted. Dead by Daylight's nice and distracting. Alright, but yeah. Guess we'll find out. And again, since today is when I'll actually be ordering a lot of stuff, because I haven't pre-ordered my December stuff yet. Which should be okay, because tomorrow's November, so the final November stuff arrives I said tomorrow, I meant today. Today is November 30th, so the final November stuff arrives today, which I'll show next week. So I just have to put my pre-orders in now. And usually there's not a whole lot of December stuff, so I should be able to knock it out real quick. So that's what I'm going to be working on. And with that, I'll definitely take a look to see if I'm going to get Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. And I should also take a look for any other Switch games I might have missed. Alright, y'all, have a nice week.